students, in this video we'll discuss about the difference between ions and radicals. So what are ions, students? Ions are simply called as charged particles, are called as ions. What are ions? Charged particles. That means they carry a charge. Charge means how many types? Whether it can be a positive charge and negative charge. So based on the charge, ions are two types. One type is called as cations. Second type is called as anions. So cations are positively charged particles. Anions are negatively charged particles. Got the clarity? So students, like ions, how do they get the charge? Where do they get the charge? How do they form cations and how do they form anions? In the last video, students, I said clearly the whole matter is made up of atoms, and these atoms do not exist independently. They exist in the molecule compound forms, yes or no? And during the formation of that molecule, what happens? I said they combine chemically. Chemically means what? Chemically means some atoms loses electrons, some atoms gains electrons, some atoms shares electrons. So this concept is not about sharing, leave sharing. What about the remaining two? Atoms loses electrons, atoms gains electrons, yes or no? Apply the same concept here. So ions are coming from atoms only. Ions are coming from atoms only. When atoms either loses electrons or gains electrons, the resultant particles are called as ions. For example, sodium atom. What is the element, students? Sodium, Na. Sodium, after losing electrons, it becomes into sodium ion, Na plus ion. That is an ion, yes or no? So ions are coming from where? Atoms only. Atoms only converting into ions. Chlorine atom. What is chlorine symbol? Cl. After gaining an electron, chlorine becomes Cl minus 1. Got the clarity? So chloride ion is coming from chlorine only. So what are the examples of cations? Examples of cations are like Na plus, H plus, Mg plus 2, Al plus 3. All these are cations. All they have plus positive charges, yes or no? What are the examples of anions? Cl minus, O minus 2, N minus 3. So what is the charge on anions? Negative charge. What is the charge on cations? Positive charge. Yes or no? So ions formations are taking place from atoms when an atom loses electrons or gains electrons. Why atom is losing or gaining electrons? During chemical reactions. Yes or no? During the reactions, atoms loses electrons or gains electrons. Now, when cations will form and when anions will form. Atoms, students, when they loses electrons. Atoms, when they loses electrons, they form cations, and atoms, when they gains electrons, they form anions. That means an atom, after losing electrons, it becomes into a positively charged particle. And atoms, after gaining electrons, it becomes into a negatively charged particle called as anion. You can see the symbols. All these are atoms only, students, but they have a charge. Then we are calling them as ions. That's it. Ions are coming from atoms only. Two types of ions, positive ions and negative ions. So one more clarity. After losing only, why do they get the positive charge? After gaining only, why do they get the negative charge? That clarity we'll discuss. So students, let us consider a sodium atom. Sodium atom. What is the symbol? Na. And what is its atomic number? 11. Atomic number also we discussed in the last video indicates number of protons, right? So sodium atom contains how many protons? 11 protons. And what is the charge on protons? Positive. If it has 11 protons, how many electrons are there? The same number of electrons. 11 electrons are there. Yes or no? Remember, all neutral atoms contain same equal number of protons and equal number of electrons. If there are 11 protons, definitely there are 11 electrons. So what is the net charge? There are 11 positive particles and 11 negative particles. So what's the net charge on this atom? Absolutely zero. Yes or no, students? Now is there any charge on the atom? No, nothing, no charge. Not only on sodium, any atom. Atoms are chargeless, no charge. All the atoms are chargeless. But do they exist like this? No. They undergo chemical reactions. During chemical reactions, what happens? Some loses electrons, some gains electrons. Here, sodium loses one electron. Sodium loses how many? One electron. If it lost one electron, student, is there any change in the number of protons? Sodium lost one electron. Is there any change in the number of protons? Absolutely no. The proton number is same. Yes or no? Plus 11 plus 11. Protons are not changing. It is simply losing one electron. Initially there are 11 electrons are there. If it lost one electron, now what are the remaining electrons? Initially 11 are there. It lost 1 electron. Electrons are 10. This positive and negative indicate the charge of the protons and electrons only. Okay. Now what is the net charge? See, what is the net charge? 11 positive particles, 10 negative particles are there. So what is the net charge on this atom now? Plus 1. Yes or no? Can we assign the symbol as still sodium? No. This is represented as Na plus ion. Sodium ion. Initially it is sodium atom. Before it is sodium atom. After losing an electron it becomes sodium ion. Why plus 1 charge? Why does it get the plus 1 charge? Look at the net charge. Because it lost 1 electron. If it lost 1 electron, now which charge is dominating? Positive charge is dominating by how much? By 1 particle. No, plus 11 minus 10. That's why Na plus 1. Can we call Na plus 1 as sodium atom? No. Sodium ion. Which ion? Cation or anion? Positive means cations. Got the clarity? This is the reason why atoms after losing an electron becomes into a positively charged particles. If an atom loses 2 electrons, what is the charge it will get? Plus 2. If an atom loses 3 electrons, what is the charge it will get? Plus 3. That's it. Understood, students? Here it lost 1 electron, so what is the charge it got? Plus 1 charge. So let's see an example with anion also. Let us consider chlorine atom. Chlorine symbol Cl. Atomic number is 17. Now answer, how many protons are there? 17 means directly, no doubt, 17 protons are there. How many electrons are there? In a neutral atom, number of protons are always equal to the number of electrons, so there are 17 electrons. Now what's the net charge? Plus 17 minus 17, absolutely 0. Atoms are chargeless. But according to the nature of the chlorine, sir, what is this nature? This not now, students. After electronic configurations, we have much concept to discuss. There you will get the clarity. Like why, sir, why some atoms are losing, why some atoms are gaining. In losing also, some are losing 1, some are losing 2, some are losing 3, some are gaining 1, some are gaining 2. All the clarities we have. All the reasons also we have. So remember, here chlorine, just remember, chlorine gains an electron. Chlorine gains 1 electron. If it gains 1 electron, is there any difference in the charge in protons? Like, is there any change in the number of protons? Absolutely no. 17 protons only. Remember, if proton changes, element changes. If proton changes, element changes. Which subatomic particles are participating in the reaction? Only electrons are participating in the chemical reaction. So, now initially 17 electrons are there. Now 17 becomes, it is gaining an electron, 18. Now which charge is dominating? Plus 17 minus 18. What is the net? Minus 1. Now how to assign the symbol? Can we assign simply Cl? No. What is the net charge? Minus 1. That's why Cl minus 1. Can we call this as chlorine atom? No. This is chloride ion. Sir, why not chlorine ion? That clarity also we have. The naming of compounds we'll discuss in the coming videos. So the name of this ion is chloride. So what is the charge on this ion? Negative charge. Got the clarity? Atoms after gaining electrons, now which particles are more? Negative particles are more. Which charge is dominating? Negative charge is dominating. That's why we end up with a negative charged particle called as anion. For example, on an atom, on an ion, the charge is minus 2. What is the thing that you'll get in your mind? That particular ion gained how many electrons? 2 electrons. Here it gains 1, got minus 1 charge. If it gains 2, it will get minus 2. A different element can gain 3, it will get minus 3. Got the clarity, students? Plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, meaning it loses 1, loses 2, loses 3. Minus 1, minus 2, minus 3 means gains 1, gains 2, gains 3. So atoms during chemical reactions, when they lose electrons, they become into a positive charged particle called as cations. Atoms, when they gain electrons, they becomes into a negatively charged particles called as anions. I hope you got the clarity about the ions. Now radicals. So students, radicals are also called as ions. Then why specially called as, they are called as radicals, you know? They are a group of atoms with a charge. For example, let us consider one molecule called as NH4OH. Then this molecule is called as ammonium hydroxide. Ammonium hydroxide. During the decomposition means we can break the molecule, we can synthesize the molecules, we can even break the molecules also. If this molecule, if you break the molecule, you know how this molecule breaks down into? This molecule breaks into NH4 plus ion and OH minus ions. Still we have a charge as SR, no, plus charge and minus charge. They are ions only. Ions are charged particles, right? Then specially why we are calling these as radicals? Why? Because are these elemental ions? Like is this a single element? Is this a single element? No. Group of elements or group of atoms with a charge is called as radical. And when do they form? Directly from element? No, they form when a molecule decomposes, when a molecule dissociates. And this is ammonium ion and this is hydroxide ion. This is called as radical. This is called as ammonium ion or ammonium radical. Radicals are also ions only, but what is the speciality? They form when a molecule dissociates, like OH minus. Directly do we have OH element? No. Yes or no? Are hydrogen and oxygen combined to form this radical? No. When do they form? When a molecule breaks down, we end up with a positive charge and negative charged particles. They are called as radical. So what is radical? Group of atoms with a charge. Like how many types of radicals? Many are there. Sulfate. What is the sulfate radical? SO4 minus 2 sulfate. Carbonate. CO3 minus 2. That's the principal difference between ion and radical. Ultimately they are charged particles only. Positive charge, negative charge. Ions mean single elemental ions. There are also one more name, elemental ions, like Cl minus, one element only. O minus 2, one element only, no oxygen. But these are group of atoms. They are also called as compound ions. These ions are also called as compound. Why? Because their group of atoms are there. Got the clarity, students? So I hope you got the clarity between an ion, a cation, anion. How do they form? When do they form? Why do they get the charge? And what is radical? When the radicals will form? What is the difference between ions and radicals? Everything we discussed in this video. Students, in the coming videos, we'll discuss about how to write the formula and how to name the compounds also. That's all for today in this video. Thank you, students.